I agree with Senator Street that addiction and making sure that people can find a path to success, overcoming addiction is not a political or partisan issue. So one of the things I wanted to follow up with you was your testimony in the House. I believe it was February 25th, and your conversation that you had with Representative George Dunbar. And he asked you a question with regard to the Bloomberg Foundation's $10 million grant,
yes.
Which has not been accounted for in the budget that the governor presented to us. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in that budget hearing with the House, you said that that money was coming in the form of resources such as staff that could potentially be here in Harrisburg, provide technical assistance at the county level, and then also providing some support to probation and parole systems.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that's correct. So the Bloomberg Foundation obviously has political leanings and an ideological agenda, as do many advocacy groups. And I have to say that having spent time as staff and then 4 years in the House, I'm unaware of this type of an arrangement being used at any department or agency in the past. Is that correct? Has this been done before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I have to be really honest with you, and that is I'm a little uncomfortable with this arrangement. I mean, we're really in sort of uncharted territory here, right? This has never been done before, and if you come into my office, you can't take a cup of coffee or a bottle of water, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so now we have $10 million coming into a department as a grant. Where are we accounting for this money?
So, you know,
If it's
again,
not in our budget, how are you accounting for that money?
For the benefit of others who may not have been familiar with that testimony. So there was a big announcement about the Bloomberg Philanthropies in partnership with Vital Strategy, CDC, and Johns Hopkins, giving out several $1 million worth of funding all across the nation to different states to assist with the opioid crisis. They picked 2 states that they were giving a much larger amount of money to, and then the other states would get smaller technical assistance grants. So Pennsylvania was one of those states. We were slated to receive $10 million. Now, when I say $10 million, they're not wiring us $10 million that Pennsylvania gets to just utilize, and that's why it's not accounted for in the budget. It is not a transfer of dollars. It is a pledge to offer $10 million worth of resources to assist us in addressing the opioid crisis. So the way that this has happened is they asked the administration to come up with ways that we felt they could be helpful to us from either a technical assistance perspective, a data analysis perspective, a research perspective. That's really kind of more in their realm of expertise, those kinds of things. So we as an administration came up with some ideas that we felt could be really helpful. They spent some time visiting with us, some different places across the state that exemplified where we thought good work was being done, where positive outcomes were being accomplished, to give them a little bit of perspective on that. And so where we stand is they were assessing what they could do with $10 million to accomplish the things that we had requested. So we don't yet know exactly where the resources will be dedicated, but they will be dedicated based on what the administration's wishes were in terms of how to target the resources. So you don't see it in the budget because it's not a transferring of dollars. It's a commitment of resources to assist in ways that the administration has requested.
So do you intend to hire employees
No.
from the state?
No.
You do not. So
No.
this will be people who are working for the Bloomberg Foundation embedded into state government.
Yes.
And who will they be accountable to? To you or to?
To our department or one of my sister agencies, depending on what the responsibility is and whose purview it would fall under. Yes, that's correct.
So just one last question. I'm running out of time here, and maybe we can follow up in a little bit. But one of the practices that we put an end to early on when I arrived in the House was the selling of Pennsylvania driver's information to third parties by PennDOT. So I guess my follow-up question would be, what type of access to state information and data will this private foundation have, and what type of rules and protections have you put in place to assure the privacy of our citizens?
Sure. So it's important to note that, they're not going to be coming to our office, sitting in a cube and using one of our computers to access all of our data. They will be treated as a contracted employee, just as we would bring in contractors from other agencies. And so the state would be responsible for, whoever they're reporting to, would be responsible for ensuring that they have access to the data that they need to have access to or are permitted to have access to. So we will be the safeguards of our information in terms of what can and should be shared. I will say that probably a good deal of the dollars are going to be spent more around technical assistance and research, which doesn't necessarily require access to our specific state data systems. Most of that information is publicly available information that they'd be using to analyze and assess, or they may be working with private institutions to gather information that might be available through them. So, for example, Johns Hopkins has access to a wealth of information that even the state doesn't necessarily have access to. So I think it's just incumbent upon the administration to ensure that they have the accesses that they are supposed to have.
Thank you, Senator. This is a very unusual situation. I don't remember in my 25 years this being someone just willing to give resources to a public function. It would be helpful for us to know what the administration asked for. Sure. So that we know whether we're duplicating services or not, and then to talk about a way to disclose it. The financial affairs of the Commonwealth are a public matter, so if we're receiving a financial benefit towards a public function, it would be, you're correct in the standpoint that our cash and modified accrual basis system doesn't provide for a booking of this number. But I believe as a matter of transparency, to meet that goal, there should be at least a disclosure of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as those plans are firmed up, we'll be happy to give you the details.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.